Good.
We're ready, Mr. Wilson.
Okay.
When you're ready.
Are y'all ready? Okay, the meeting of the Corpus Christi B Corporation Type B is called to order. Ms. Duran, would you call the roll?
President Wilson, Alan Wilson.
Here.
Vice President Diana Summers.
Here.
Secretary Jesus Jimenez.
Here.
Board members Mark LaRue,
Here.
Victoria Holland,
Here.
Johnny Filippello,
Here.
Vishnu Reddy, absent. Okay, a quorum of the board is present to conduct the meeting.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make public comment?
Good afternoon. My name is John Bell, 13750 Primavera in Corpus Christi, Texas. And here just to say a few words on behalf of a hotel development on North Padre Island that is going to be considered by you this month and next month. I've lived on the island for over 30 years and lived in Corpus Christi for 45. And there's been no hotel development built on the seawall in 45 years. The seawall is an interesting challenge because it's exposed to the elements. It's very premium priced real estate. And this proposal will put in 2 hotels and a conference center. My client is a very experienced hotel developer and works with all the franchises. He's going to get a Courtyard by Marriott franchise with one of the hotels, which we do not have in Corpus Christi. People ask me, could we get a full Marriott or a full Hilton? If anyone in Corpus Christi could get that brand in Corpus Christi, it would be my client, but regrettably, we have not established the market yet for that to happen. However, if he's successful with this Courtyard prospect, he's got additional acreage on the seawall for additional hotel development that could be a Hilton or a full Marriott brand, but it's critical to get this step done. We also need conference space, and this has a 5,000 square foot conference center between the 2 hotels that will be available to the public and to for meetings, because that's dearly needed on Padre Island. And so in the next 2 months, I would appreciate your careful support of this proposal so it could go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Ms. Duran, have you received any electronically?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving on, are there any corrections to the minutes? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Holland, I think you were ill last month, weren't you?
Myself and my children were very ill last month. Yes.
Would you like to have an excuse?
Yes, please.
Okay. Dr. Reddy's not here, so okay. So I would entertain a motion to excuse Ms. Holland's absence.
A motion to approve.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Type B financial reports.
Thank you, Mr. President. Cedric Giviosan, Director of Finance and Procurement here. Included in your agenda packet are the unaudited financial statements as of March 31st, 2025 for the Corpus Christi B Corporation. We have a budget to actual presentation for you here, along with just a recap of commitments. And jumping right into the presentation, we start with your amended budget column with total revenues budgeted for the fiscal year, about $4.9 million. Revenues.
Can you hang on just a minute? It's not showing up on my screen.
Oh, sure thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're working on it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
just a lot easier to follow along if it's on the screen.
Yes, sir. No worries.
Well, I hesitate to go blind. Yeah. But I guess in the interest of time, we. Yeah, sure. We'll share.
Yeah, we can share them.
Johnny and I can share.
I can see the angle.
Okay. All right, have at it.
Okay, I'll go a little slow here. So jumping on page 2 of the presentation in the packet, it should be the statement of revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance. Let me know when you're ready, Mr. President. Got it? Okay, excellent. All right, so starting over on the amended budget column, total revenues for the fiscal year were budgeted at about $4.9 million. Actuals year to date, as of March, came in at $2.5 million. This leaves about $2.3 million of revenues to be earned. You are at 51% of budget, which lines up with the calendar year of March, which is 50% of the fiscal year. Moving over to your expenditures, their total expenditures budgeted for the fiscal year amount to about $16 million. Actuals as of March, expenditure actuals are about 6.2. This leaves about 9.7 million pending to be spent. For the fiscal year, there's an anticipation of a decrease to fund balance of 11.1 million, leaving you a fund balance at the end of the fiscal year of about 3.6. As of March, your fund balance is about 11 million. I'll take any questions on the recap of revenues, expenditures, and budget.
Any questions?
Okay. Next slide, next slide over is the 5-year forecast of funds available for commitments. Here we have the beginning fund balance column, followed by the estimated annual revenue column. You'll notice in this estimated annual revenue column, we keep those revenues flat at 4.9 million. We have future incentives, one column over, starting with fiscal year 2026. We anticipate about 2.7 million to be spent on future incentives, followed by about 400,000 per fiscal year after that. And administration and other expenditures, we're keeping that flat at 758,942. Some more detail on those other expenditures will be in the upcoming slides. Based on the current set of commitments, we anticipate your fund balance at the end of 2030 to be about 22.3 million. And of course, the number is subject to change as you make additional commitments. Here we have a recap of the major business incentives, small business contracts. A total committed so far is about 6.29 million. Some of the larger commitments here is the Next Ports Company at 1.8, South Texas Military Housing of $1 million, Hilton Homewood Suites Hotel of about $2 million. Next, we have a recap of the administration cost for the Economic Development Fund. We have a total of about 4.2 million, and if you jump over to fiscal year 2026, here's where you see the annual trend of about 346,000 committed to the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation, 114,000 committed to the General Fund for Administrative Services, and then we have direct operating expenditures for the 4B of about 298,000.
Can you give us some detail on the 2 line items that almost doubled or tripled?
So are you comparing 2025 to 2026?
Yes.
Okay, so we do need to improve the presentation. What happens in fiscal year 2025, we're reducing the amount that's there as we're spending it. So that's fiscal year 2025 should line up with the 758,000 per year. That's being reduced by the actuals we're being spent. And so what this shows is the the pending amount to be spent of the 407. And so for administrative services, let's say for general fund there, that's 114,000 per year. We're about halfway through fiscal year 2025, so we're just showing 57,000.
So can you go back to a previous slide, or maybe two? One more?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've spent 250,000 on the CCREDC, and then the 43,000 on operating expenditures and the 57. And so that's in addition to what's left in the 2025 budget.
Right, if you jump over to the variance column, you'll see, the easy one for me to see is the administrative services. We have the 57,204, and that's what you'll see on your 2025 commitments and the latter slide.
And
Yeah.
do we get any information on what makes up that $750,000? I mean, it's a big lump sum number here, but.
I'm not sure if we have a detailed breakout in the financial statements, but it's something we can add. And so the 114,000 is the indirect cost for the general fund. The 298,000 in operating expenditures, we do have that. I can give you that breakout. It's 150,000 that was committed for a position, 38,000 committed to small business data software, 50,000 for marketing and other public relation expenditures.
But can we get that in a, I mean, you can rattle it off,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I can't digest that so quickly. But if it's costing us about $1 million, and I think our expenditures for small business projects was 2.75 in 2026. I just want to make sure we're in alignment there.
Yes, I can get you that breakout.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, any other questions on the Economic Development Fund? If not, jumping right into the Corpus Christi B Corporation Housing Fund. For fiscal year 2025, a total of $747,000 was budgeted for revenues. Year-to-date actuals amount to $745,000. Almost all your revenue budget has been met for the fiscal year as of March. This leaves about $1,258 of interest pending to be earned. Jumping down to total expenditures, you have $2.7 million budgeted for the fiscal year. A total of about $30,000 has been spent. This leaves about $2.7 million funds to be spent. Overall, your estimated ending fund balance for the fiscal year is about $915,000 based on budget. Currently, we have about $3.6 million pending expenditures to be spent. Here we have a 5-year forecast of funds available for commitments. Jumping over to your estimated annual revenue, we're keeping revenues, of course, are flat at $500,000 is what's required to be committed, as well as nominal interest income added in there to make it $556,179. We carry about $70,000 in administrative services expenditures. Overall, we expect the total fund balance to be about 3.3 at the end of fiscal year 2030. We do have one commitment for fiscal year 25 that hasn't been spent. It's about $1.1 million for the Palms at Morris. And this is just a straight line of our administrative service costs. There's about $39,000 to be spent fiscal year 2025. And 26 through 2030, the admin cost is about $70,000. Next, we have the Streets Arterial and Collector Fund. For fiscal year 2025, a total of $4 million was budgeted for revenues. About $1.79 million has been collected. This leaves about $2.2 million of revenues to be collected. Expenditures for the fiscal year amount to about $4 million. So far, about $36,000 has been spent. The largest funding pending to be spent there is the transfer out to the Street CIP Fund. So we're pending about $4 million to complete expenditures under budget, sorry. So overall, we don't expect to have a fund balance in this fund, so all the funds that come in get transferred out to the Streets Fund. We currently have about $1.7 million of fund balance pending to be transferred. Here's a snapshot of your Streets CIP Fund. So overall, we have about $16.5 million in total projects budgeted. Expenditures to date amount to $1.4. This leaves about $14.9 million project funds pending to be spent.
Was the Bear Lane project approved? I don't recall. Yeah, I don't ever recall it actually coming before us. Did?
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was coming back. I agree. Because there were some drainage questions around it.
Drainage, and I think the fees for engineers.
Okay. I'm sorry, that was the Bear Lane project?
Correct.
Okay. Let me validate with staff to see when that was approved, and I'll shoot that to you in an email.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and here's just a snapshot of a 5-year forecast of funds available for commitment. We show 0 funds available with the assumption all revenues coming in are going out to fund street improvements. And this is just a slide recapping of our commitment to streets over the next 6 years. We have about $23 million committed for street improvements. And a forecast out of our total admin cost is about $82,000 per year. And lastly, we have the sales tax revenue update. Recap here is, as of March, we have a total of $4.4 million budgeted for revenues. Actuals came in at $4.5 million. Overall, actuals are $67,000 better than budget. Jumping over to your year-to-date actuals, our actuals variance is about $58,000. Actuals for fiscal year 2025 came in about $58,000 better than actuals from 2024.
What drives the January numbers?
Sorry?
What's driving the January numbers? Is that just leftover from the holidays, or?
So January is
It's just an awfully big jump.
December. Those would be November actuals, so that could be the holiday if Thanksgiving is in there. We did have some good audit collections. That was an anomaly. I'm not sure if it was in January when we got those audit collections from the state. So a large driver in or a large percentage of our increase year over year is related to some audit findings the state did and collected additional sales tax.
Okay, so this is kind of, when we're looking at this, we need to factor in kind of a 2-month lag. If January is really November's
Correct.
number. Okay.
Right. Any other questions? This concludes my presentation.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Duran, let the minutes show that Dr. Reddy is here. Dr. Reddy, would you like to request an excused absence for last month? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, the board will go into executive session on item 3 per Texas Government Code 551.071 and 551.087. We will return. We'll be back in session. The next item on the agenda is item 4, motion authorizing amendment number 1 to the reimbursement agreement with Elevate QOF LLC. Mr. Almaguer.
Thank you, Board President. Randy Almaguer, Compliance Officer with your Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation. So yes, this is an amendment to the Homewood Suites by Hilton. I appreciate everyone that had the opportunity to take the tour of the project. I really wanted to show y'all, how fast this project's been going up. But in talking to the developer, I think last month, and looking at the contract and the agreement, looking at the completion date of September 30th, I had him talk to his workers there. Let's see, do we need to extend this? When do you think you can get it done? And he was thinking maybe November, December. So then when I actually went on the tour there and we looked, I said, you know what, show me all your delays, and we provided that in the packet. So he had about 40, 50 days worth of delays there. So well, let's see if we can extend it out to March of next year, just in case anything else happens. But again, as most of you saw, this project has been moving along pretty rapidly. He's still committed to try to get this done before the end of the year, but we are recommending for March. But that concludes my presentation.
Any questions of Randy?
I don't recall anything on the delays in the packet.
It wasn't in the letter by the developer?
I guess I thought you were including something more on like specific delays.
He had inclement weather. The tariffs are playing a little bit in this. He was crane issues there, having to shut down. Picking specific days, so he's not, stopping businesses from operating across from him. So he had to have specific days. So then you're waiting to do something, things like that. If I didn't provide that, I can definitely send it to you. But it was a pretty detailed list he had.
And my understanding is now there is some sort of scheduling with all the projects that are going in around that area to kind of mitigate future delays.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Motion to approve extension.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the amendment. Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Next item, item 5, presentation and discussion on the proposed FY 2025-2026 Corpus Christi Type B Corporation budget. Arturo.
Hi, good afternoon. Arturo Marquez, Director for the Office of Economic Development. And today we're going to go over the proposed budget. For those of you that are new, typically what we do is we go through this presentation and then we bring this back for the following meeting for final adoption before it gets presented to City Council. I also want to point out that we, of course, are talking about the Type B board today, right now. However, we do have a Type A, 2 Type A's that are expiring. So that is actually going to get mentioned through here about what's going to happen, some of the transitions and some of the plans for those funds. So even though this will be mentioned at the end of the presentation, just know that I'm referring to the expiring Type A's, both the seawall and the arena. So we'll go ahead and get started. So beginning fund balance from fiscal year 2024, we ended the year with 14.7 million, and that was carried over for the amended budget. We are expecting a total revenue of 4.9, and just actually a little bit over that. I'm looking at the fourth column, starting with fiscal year 2025. So we are expecting a total revenue of 4.9 with now in actual estimated expenditures of 13.3. The difference that you see on the expenditures from fiscal year 2025 on the amended budget versus the actuals has to do with some of the projects that are now being pushed forward, such as Homewood, as like what we spoke today, and then also Next Sports, which is something that the board took action in a previous meeting. So those are actually getting pushed off to a later point in time. So that gives us an ending balance of 6.4. So next year we will be starting the year with a 6.4 balance and a total revenue of 4.78. So it's a slight increase, and a total expenditures of 8 million and some change. And before I continue, I just want to make sure, did everybody get a copy? Everybody does have a physical copy, so that way we can follow along. Perfect. Okay. All right, so that would give us a ending fund balance for the following year of $3.1 million. Now, I'm just going to go over the revenue and the breakdown of the revenue and the breakdown of the expenses. For the revenue, we, of course, are expecting a little bit over $4.5 million in sales tax, and we also have some interest and investment included on there of $211,000, bringing us to a total of 4.78 estimated revenue. Okay. The expenses is broken down into the following categories, and feel free to stop me. I am going to go through all of these in detail, and in fact, I also want to point out that I do have a lot of the partners here that can answer any specific questions as we go into the small business and other categories. So the expenses are broken down into economic development. This is the amount that you see on your far right corner on the column of fiscal year 2026 in the amount of $346,284. This one is broken down for the the partnership, and the contract that we have with RADC. The major business incentive, that one we're estimated at $2.75 million. I'll go into the breakdown of that one here shortly. The small business project, we are typically, we do spend about $1 million, and again, I'm going to go through the breakdown of that one with an additional slide of additional requests that the partners are requesting from us. Administrative fees, that's $10,000. That's your typical expenses that we utilize to run the Type B. The transfer to general fund of $115,000. Again, that goes into salaries and expenses to run the Type B operations. And the transfer to CIP of 3.7. As I mentioned, I'm going to go through a breakdown of that, what that entails in at one of the last slides. So again, I'm going to skip over economic development. Again, as I mentioned, that is a breakdown of the contract in partnership with the RDC, and I'm going to start off with the major business incentives project. So the major business incentives, we do have the next sports complex. As I mentioned earlier, this is one of the ones that was pushed off to a future year with the extension that the board approved at a previous meeting. The drone program is actually getting paid out this year, so we are not going to see the expense continue on to next year. That's why you see it zeroed out. However, we do have one additional final payment for the South Texas military housing. So we are going to be seeing that in the expenses for the following year. The erosion of public parks along this Corpus Christi Bay, that one gets paid out this year, so we're not going to see an additional expense for next year. And as I mentioned, the Hilton Homewood Suites, it is a broken down of multiple payments, so we are expecting that payment to start off in the following year. Actually, here, let me slow down a little bit. Are there any questions on this one? No? Okay. All right, now for the small business projects, this is the proposed, in quote, this is the proposed project for the Texas Internship Program, $150,000. The Del Mar College Internship Program, $140,000. The Del Mar College, the PTAC and the Apex, $110,000. The Del Mar College CRC, $150,000. The Del Mar College SBDC, bless you, $150,000. We should be getting the presentation on the enhanced skills training in the upcoming meetings on the expenses for that one. Yeah. But that one is not going to continue. That is a single payment, so we're not scheduling any payments for that in the upcoming year. The Cyber Center at $140,000 and Lift Fund $150,000 and SCORE at $86,700. Now, as I mentioned, I do have the partners here with us because they have submitted a request with the exception of two, to increase these expenses towards them. So for SCORE, as I mentioned earlier, we typically fund them $86,700, and they are requesting an increase up to $95,225. The TAMU internship, an additional $50,000 from $150 to $200. The SBDC from staying at a steady rate of $150,000. The Apex going from $110 to $150. The CRC staying at the same rate, $150. Cyber Center from $140, their request was to increase it by $55 to $195. Lift Fund, again, going from $150 to $200. And finally, the DMC, the Del Mar College Internship, from $140,000 to $150,000. I do want to take a little pause here in case there are any questions. As I've previously mentioned, we do have the partners if you guys want to ask anything specific to the request.
Any questions?
Some of these increases are, a 25% increase. Do we have any data behind the request for a 25% increase?
You wanna, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. We'll be doing our one-on-one briefings till the next meeting, but yes, I have all that information. The formal request came in, so we'll be able to talk to that and how it's quantified
so
and
we'll
everything. So it's not an arbitrary number, it's just, there's a reason for that.
Okay. And I think specifically like growth into other industries or industries that are looking for labor here would be, something that we would like to see in addition to this request for an increase.
Oh, yes, ma'am. And you'll see something on your calendar, trying to get with you and talk to you more about the small business programs.
And then I did read something yesterday about, there may be being some focus on craft training skills. I know that's not a program that's not currently in here, but is that something that either of the colleges, I think there's going to be some state money for it?
I'm not too sure.
Okay.
Again, we can bring that back. I know I saw something that you're talking about on LinkedIn, actually, with the craft.
Yeah, it just came out yesterday, and I don't even think it's been passed, but that it's being looked into to have some state funding behind it. So it'd be great if we had programs in place that could go after that, because I know those are fields of expertise that are needed here. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
All right, following right along, the next slide, the Type B incentives. Essentially, this is just to show that we're going to zero it out. All the expenses on the botanical and the land office are essentially getting paid this year, so there will be no additional expenses to be incurred on the following year. Now, lastly, as I did mention, there is a request for the CIP projects in the amount of 3.7, and those are going to be broken down into the construction of the Harbor Playhouse improvements and the Harbor Playhouse HVAC system. So I'm going to take a little pause there to see if you guys have any questions on that.
Outside the HVAC system, do we have a breakdown on what those improvements would be for the Harbor Playhouse?
Do you want to step in? Yeah. Yes, give me 1 second.
Hello, good afternoon. Elsie Borkstead, Assistant Director, Office of Economic Development. For the Harbor Playhouse, the improvements consist of items on the exterior, mostly the building envelope, roof as well that might be needed, some improvements there, and then also ADA compliance that would move from the parking lot into the facility, the entrance on how to get pedestrians through the sidewalks and whatnot, some lighting for safety concerns. But right now we're currently in design. Concept study has been completed. We're moving into 60% design on that project.
So we don't have a completed design on that project yet?
No, not yet. No, design is in 25 fiscal year, which the board was able to fund this for this phase, and then construction will move into 26.
Okay.
Yes.
But we will get a detailed breakdown of the
Correct.
design. Okay.
Yes. We have the next review meeting coming up for the 60%, which will give us a better understanding of that prioritization of the needs.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So moving right along, and again, to the people that are new, so the Type B is broken down into three essentially categories. The economic development, which we just finished, they usually get, not usually, but they get 50% of it. The next phase is the housing that they get $500,000 allocated to them each and every year, and then the remainder goes into streets, which will be the later category. So stepping into the housing one, as you can see here on the board, we did end with a fund balance of 2.9. And we do expect, as I mentioned, the revenue to be that $500,000 plus additional interest. I'll go into the breakdown of that one in just a bit. And then the expenditures are estimated for this year at 1.2, leaving us an estimated fund balance of 2.4 for the start of 2026. And from there on the 2026, we have an expectancy of $70,445 for expenditures, leaving us a fund balance of 2.9 for the following year.
The infill housing program, have we had any projects go forward under that? Because I think that was $1 million approval.
Yeah, no.
So we haven't had anything. So is that $1 million going to come back into the budget?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It wouldn't come back. We're going to let it roll to fund balance.
Correct. Yeah, this would actually roll into fund balance.
Okay. So that money's just gone, it didn't get used, it's just gone? It goes, which fund balance is it going back into?
Heather Holber, Assistant City Manager. So it goes back into the housing fund balance.
Okay.
So, we did bring forward a project earlier this year for the Prospera housing that we did allocate funding to. We've got a couple other projects we'll be bringing forward to you, but we aren't ready to bring them forward for consideration yet.
But that Prospera project isn't part of the infill housing program?
No, exactly. And so I think we had that program a couple of years ago. We had $1 million budgeted each year.
Mm-hmm.
We were not able to find activities that we could appropriately use that money for, just due to some of the restrictions. And so we've let that roll back to fund balance, and we'll bring forward hopefully some more things for your consideration.
So it was already rolled back in?
Yes, it's reflected in that fund balance.
The restrictions that kept us from using that project or those funds, I mean, did we have any discussion with the groups that really kind of were more focused on those infill housing type builds as to what the restrictions kept them from using those funds?
So we have, remember with the affordable housing, it is subject to the same qualifiers that it is at the federal level. So it has to be used for projects that support lower AMI type households. So there has to be income qualification. It's been challenging trying to find builders who want to partner on those type of things where you have some type of income qualifiers on those, the end product, basically.
Okay. I know there are several groups in the city that focus on those types of projects.
Yes.
And I guess I had heard some complaints that they were not having their concerns with the program addressed. And I understand if it's a federal restriction, you can't do anything about that. But I just want to make sure that we had a roundtable to discuss that with those groups.
And we have, and we are, we've been working with planning very closely along with our housing group to see what other ideas we can bring forward that we think that we would be able to be appropriate for the use of this money that would still, maybe not infill housing, but other opportunities to help build up some of our neighborhoods and focus in areas where we can put this money to use.
Okay, because beside the Salvation Army, I think in my 6 years here, it's only been apartments.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I would think that there's other programs that these funds can be used for. So,
and part of it has just been the economy. We had looked at some type of home buyer type down payment assistance, but what we have finding is that, and I think we had brought this forward to the board, is just the gap between the income qualified, where those incomes need to be, and what the price of housing is, and what that gap is between what they can qualify for loans. Is it just is too big to bridge right now? Mm-hmm. So we are exploring other opportunities to put this money to work.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So back to the slide on the total expenditures, you'll see on a column starting with fiscal year 2025 amended budget compared to the 25 estimated actuals, you will see that drop from 2.7 to 1.2. And this is something that was discussed at an earlier meeting about the Greenwood project not continuing with the program. So as I mentioned, the housing, we do allocate $500,000 into it, and the additional funds come from the interest and investments, equivalent to $563,830. So for the expenses, affordable housing, as mentioned, we are not allocating any funding for it next year. However, the administration does see a $10,000 expense, and the transfer to general fund is $60,455 for a total amount of $70,455. Affordable housing, again, this is just to clearly state that we're going to zero it out. The pumps at Morris, we're going to be paying that out this year, so therefore we're not going to push this to the following years, and it's going to get zeroed out. Now, lastly is the budget overview on streets. The beginning fund balance is $87,394 with an expected revenue of that remainder that I mentioned earlier from the half minus the $500,000 of $407,000, and we have an expected expenditures for the following year at 4.19. The sales tax, the way it's broken down, as mentioned, is 4.076 out of the half minus the 500, plus the interest income of 31,181, leaving us with a total of 4.1. Okay. And lastly, The Business, Job, and Development, the administration, we do have the expenses of $10,000 and a transfer to general fund with $72,720, and transfer to CIP of 4.1. Okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are going to be two Type A's that are going to be essentially expiring, and for that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be transitioning from from two Type A's to all Type B's, and those are going to be accounted for here. So one of those authorities that we'll be able to expend funds on is going to be new facilities. So that's going to be your C District facilities, and we do expect to collect $4.5 million on that with an estimated interest and investment of 3.5. So the one that this one is broken down is that the arena, currently the Type A arena is the first one to expire. It is going to expire in September, at the end of September, and we're going to start collecting at the beginning of October. This particular one gets broken down into two uses. We're going to see facilities, and we're going to see streets and collector streets as the two potential uses. Therefore, what you see here is half of that, right? And the facilities administration, we're going to allocate $5,000 for expenditures, leaving us with a fund balance of 4.5 for the following year. Okay. As I mentioned, the other portion of the arena, the second use, the second purpose for that is going to get the other half, and that's where you see on this slide. So the sales tax we expect to collect is $4.5 million out of that, with the same interest of $3,500. And facilities, we're expecting the expense of facilities administration of $5,000 with, as I mentioned, the same half and half amount of 4.5. Okay. And then lastly, the seawall, the current Type A seawall authority is going to expire in March. And that one, we're only going to collect, of course, for half of a year. And with that anticipation, the sales tax that we expect to collect for that one is going to be $4.5 million, again, with an interest of $3,500 and the administrative expenses of $5,000. So at that point, once we reach that stage in time, yeah, exactly. So we would transition from two different, quote unquote, boards to one singular one. So that's not going to happen until April of next year. But this is where those funds are going to be going towards, and that's how much the expected revenue is going to come in.
So if you're a Type A board member, you're going to get fired?
We'll have to sit through the transition.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any questions on this budget? And with that, my presentation is complete. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, Executive Director comments. Mr. Zanoni.
No prepared comments for today, Chairman.
Okay.
Sir.
There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Type A will start in about 5 minutes.